ונתן תוקף קדושת היום.
הוא נתן תוקף קדושת היום.
כי הוא נורא ואיום, ובו תינשא
proclaim the sacred power of this day. It is awesome and full of dread. For on this day your dominion is exalted, your throne established in steadfast love. There in truth you reign. In truth you are judge and arbiter, counsel and witness. You write and you seal. You record and recount. You remember deeds long forgotten. You open the book of our days, and what is written there proclaims itself, for it bears the signature of every human being.
So for this is the first time in history that the mayors of the three largest cities in the United States are all Jewish. Michael Bloomberg of New York, Rahm Emanuel of Chicago, and Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles. You okay, Cantor? Vamp? I'm vamping while you're moving. So Garcetti, you probably didn't know he was Jewish. Actually, I like saying his name because in today's world, we don't always know from last names, but he was raised as a Jew and identifies as one. I also wanted to say that one of those mayors, Rahm Emanuel, did something kind of interesting this year. He just issued a proclamation naming last week, August 31st, as Alan Sherman Day. How many of you remember Alan Sherman? Well, not a lot of people don't. So Alan Sherman died very young, but he left us a lot of parodies. The most famous is Hello Mother, Hello Father. Yeah, I know. That's in the. It's actually in the proclamation. This is the 50th anniversary of the publishing of Hello Mudda, Hello Fada. But I wanted to quote a different parody of his. It may not even be a parody. We haven't been able to trace down the music. Cantor tried all over and thinks that Alan Sherman may have written, and I'm going to just read through part of it, but it takes us to a time when Jews were traveling salesmen. There were a lot of traveling salesmen in the United States. A lot of you remember those Fuller Brush men and all those people who would come to the doors and knock on the doors to sell us all kinds of things. And many Jews, following the tradition of the peddler with the pack on the back, which is what a lot of immigrants did in this country in the 19th century, would become traveling salesmen. So he wrote this, so you have to go back a little ways to those days. I sell a line of plastics and I travel on the road. I have a case of samples, which, believe me, is a load. Every night, a strange cafe, a strange hotel, and then early in the morning, I'm on the road again. When the season's over and my lonesome journey ends, it's the only time I see my family and my friends. I drive up Ocean Parkway, and before I stop the car, my ma leans out the window and she yells out, "Here we are. Shake hands with your Uncle Max, my boy. Here is your sister Cheryl, and here is your cousin Isabel. That's Irving's oldest girl. And you remember the Tishman twins, Gerald and Jerome. We've all come out to greet you and to wish you welcome home. Meet Merowitz, Barowitz, Handelbaum, Shandelbaum, Sperber and Gerber and Steiner and Stone, Boskowitz, Lubowitz, Aronson, Berenson, Kleiman and Feynman and Freeman and Cohn, Smolowitz, Wallowitz, Teitelbaum, Mandelbaum, Levin, Levinsky, Levine and Levy, Brumberger, Schlumberger, Minkus and Pinkus, Stein with an EI and Stein with a Y. Wait, I'm not done. Thank you very much. Shake hands with your Uncle Saul, my boy, and here is your brother Sid, and here is your cousin Yetta, who expects another kid. Whenever you're on the road, my boy, wherever you may roam, we'll all be here when you come back to wish you welcome home. Now you can applaud. So one of the reasons I wanted to use that song, when I look out this morning, in one sense, one of the very important messages of Rosh Hashanah is welcome home. Really is. Now, you heard those names. Those aren't the names of our congregation so much anymore. The names first and last have changed. Sid and Yetta and all those. Not so much. Those aren't our names that we have in the congregation. And all of those last names, there are so many different ones now. We are a different eclectic congregation. But still, welcoming home is very much about what Rosh Hashanah is about. It's about mishpacha, family. It's about the big community. It's about us gathering together and just renewing our relationship to each other. So I want to give you a little bit of straight talk today as a family. And for that, I'm going to start with a notion that comes out of Abraham and Sarah. There's a quote in the Bible that says, "Lo tuchal lehitalem." You must not be indifferent. You must not cause yourself to disappear from a moment. You must not be indifferent. And that is really what I want to talk to you about, is the notion of our indifference and our need to not be indifferent. All of our mitzvot, all of our traditions are based on that premise, that we won't just stand on the outside like those two young servants did and do nothing. Our tradition tells us to do. That's why we have a mitzvot system of commands. That's why we have a system of rituals. Everything is about acting in our tradition, acting out our values. So I want to take you back to one of those core moments, the golden calf. The golden calf. At the foot of Mount Sinai, while Moses was on the top, a group of Jews got together and built this golden calf. When Moses came down and confronted them, God opened up the earth. You remember in Cecil B. DeMille's thing, remember? Opened up, well, some of you do. The ones who remember Alan Sherman remember Cecil B. DeMille. opened up the earth and swallowed up, that's what it says in the Torah, and swallowed up all of those who were worshiping the golden calf. And at that moment, God turns to Abraham and says, stand back, I'm going to destroy all the people, and you're the only one I'm going to save. And Moses pleads for us, and God listens to his plead, and he forgives us. The Talmud asks the question, what was the sin of the people? The guilty ones were already dead. They'd been swallowed up. The ones who actually built it and worshiped. What did the people do? The answer is they were indifferent. They did nothing. They stood by and watched. They watched the golden calf being built. They watched people donating their jewels, their gold, to be melted down. They watched people starting to dance around this idol, and they did nothing. And that was enough to merit, for God's notion, the death penalty. You shall not remain indifferent. There's a recently published book by David Carradine called The Undivided Past. His theory as an historian is that even though we think of history as being divisions, if you look at it in the general sweep, it is much more about people's coming together over long periods of time, about breaking down the barriers that separate us, so that we began in some way as tribes, but we have grown into larger and larger groups over the years. And he uses a lot of different examples that I won't go into, and it's an interesting book, but that's the Jewish idea of history. We believe we started with one ancestor, one language, one God, and that ultimately that's where we are journeying toward unity, toward echad. That's why we say the Shema, to remind ourselves all the time that our vision is one of unity, of everyone together, of joining the world in some Mashiach zeit, in some time of peace for all people. Albert Einstein's one of my favorite human beings to read about, study. Not only was he a genius, one of the greatest geniuses of all time in science and physics, but he also was a great humanitarian. And he has this wonderful paragraph that I wanted to share with you. He said, "Strange is our situation here on earth. Each of us comes for a short visit, not knowing why, yet sometimes seeming to a divine purpose. There is one thing we do know definitely, that we are here for the sake of each other. Many times a day, I realize how much my own outer and inner life is built upon the labors of others, and how earnestly I must exert myself in order to give in return as much as I have received and am still receiving." Amen to that. I owe, big time. I owe for the past, for the present, for what I continue to see in the future, for the blessings and gifts that I've received and continue to enjoy. You too. Each of us owes big time for all that we have received. And we forget this. We sort of think that we are just entitled to this incredible world, incredible country, incredible place that we have. We just assume it, and we forget what it took to create this Eden in the world, this beautiful place with all of its difficulties. No one wants to move from here. People are moving to here. You know, when we forget, we should be embarrassed. We should feel ashamed that we've forgotten it. And then we should commit to doing something about it, to not remaining indifferent. So this year, I am asking you to consider 4 commitments. There's a card, you've seen it. It's in that packet of stuff you have. There are a number of ways you can respond to this. You can respond to it actually today by giving it to an usher or putting it in the boxes as you go out, or leaving it with one of us. You can go on our website. You can click on. It's on there now. Just click on it. You can email it in. Whatever you do, I want you to consider this morning one of these or all of these commitments. You can make them all. They're for different kinds of things. And I want to explain why I chose these 4. The first one is a commitment to humanity. I'm asking those who qualify to volunteer for the next great cancer study that's being run by the American Cancer Society. We at Temple Beth Sholom and the Jewish community have been asked to be a part of it, to recruit volunteers. It's a longitudinal study. It's one of the most important studies going forward. It involves looking at the genes and the DNA along with cancer issues. It's going to be studied over the next few decades, and the results of it might actually save our lives, our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives. All of the previous studies have done that. This will as well. When you think about it, you think about that notion of all that we receive from medicine, all that we get now, because some other people were part of studies, other people who volunteered, and trials that took place, and scientists that failed but finally succeeded. Those pills we take now to keep us healthy, to deal with a lot of our issues. We have the opportunity to help humanity. If you are between 30 and 65, you will have the opportunity in November to come to Temple. You'll be reading about it. Dr. Donna Lundy is recruiting for us and is spearheading our part of it. And you can be a part of this great addition to humanity. It isn't hard, but it takes a desire. It takes not being indifferent. A number of years ago at Mount Sinai Hospital, there was a lecture given, and the doctor that was giving it, I don't remember who it was, the theme of it was how to live a long and healthy life. And the doctor listed 10 items in order of the most important. Number 1, be born with good genes. Number 2, don't get cancer. Number 3, don't get in a serious accident. Not a lot we can do about 1 and 3. I mean, we can try and keep ourselves safe for 3, but we can help with the cancer issue. The other ones are the ones that we know. Eat well, don't drink and smoke, don't do all the things that exercise. I mean, all of that, but they were further down the list. The 3 things that most impact are those 3, and we can do something about the issue of cancer. And I would recommend for those that are health conscious, a book that came out this year called The Cure for Everything. It's really a wonderful book. It's science-based, looks at all the latest studies. It's by Timothy Caulfield. He quotes Walter Willett from Harvard, who says, healthy food choices, physical activity, and not smoking could prevent 80% of coronary artery disease, 70% of stroke, 90% of type 2 diabetes, but very little affects cancer. That's why we're doing the study. We're trying to figure out how to break those codes. So that's the commitment to humanity. And now the commitment to our country. This is the United States of America. We all know that. We take it for granted. We take for granted those people who built this blessed country, take for granted the wars they fought, the battles they fought, the court cases they fought, all of the things that have created what we are. I'm asking you to commit to do one thing to make this country a little better, and that is, I'm asking you to contact your congressional representative to urge the passing of the Senate immigration bill. It's not a perfect bill by a long shot, but it is a step in the direction of righting a terrible injustice that we have committed as Americans against millions of people who are living in our midst. A group of rabbis in the country, Reform rabbis, I was included, were very active over the summer in trying to help get it through the Senate. And I have to say that we were able to meet with Senator Marco Rubio here locally. It was the only meeting that was held nationally with him about it. This group of rabbis and interfaith leaders was able to work with our communities in getting it through the Senate. It's harder to get it through the House. We need your help in this. It is essential. We are people of immigration, you and me. We are. We started with Abraham and Sarah being told to become immigrants. Leave your country. Go to some distant place. And it wasn't just Egypt we left to go into the desert. We've been in every country in the world. And in fact, we have many of them represented here. We are perhaps the world's first immigrants. And over 30 times in our Torah, it says, remember you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So treat the stranger well. Leviticus, it said, when strangers sojourn in your land, you shall not do them wrong. Someone asked me, is this a Jewish value? The stranger who sojourns with you shall be to you as the native, as the citizen, and you shall love them as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And we're still immigrants. A lot of you know parts of my story over the years. My grandfather came as a boy to Ellis Island, changed his name from Usher Bibas to Isidore Glickstein, married another immigrant, my grandmother Ida. My grandfather, Label Niehaus from Hungary, changed his name to Louis Newhouse, came as a young boy, married my grandmother Rachel, the daughter of immigrants. Joni is a first-generation American, born from German refugee parents and a sister who were born there, was the first of her family to be born in this country. We're all very close to immigrants, so let's do a little survey. I'm going to ask you to stretch for a moment. If you can answer yes to any question that I'm about to ask you, just stand. I want to see how many it applies to. Are you an immigrant to this country yourself? Stand if you are, if you were born somewhere else. Are or were your parents immigrants? Stay standing. Are or were your grandparents immigrants? Take a look around. Are we a people of immigrants or are we not? Thank you. Please be seated. You shall not remain indifferent. The immigrants may come from countries we didn't come from, but we are immigrants and we know what it's like. And they deserve better than what we've been giving them. And all I'm asking you to do is enter into the debate, is to try and convince our representatives to pass a flawed but helpful bill that will start us on the right path. And what are we going to do for our community? For our community, of course, we need to continue to volunteer. We need to give of our time, and many of you do. Many of us are really active, and I'm very proud of all the activities that our congregation is engaged in this community, in the secular community, in the Jewish community, active as volunteers helping the sick, the poor, the hungry, those who need help in education, those who need help in all kinds of areas. We are deeply involved in our volunteering. But I want you to think of one other thing. I thought of it a little more clearly when I read this piece that was sent to me by Dr. Dan and Tam Nixon from Dartmouth College. Rabbi Edward Borez is the head of Hillel there, and he has this really interesting project where he takes some students every year, goes over to Eastern Europe, and they identify an old Jewish cemetery that has been neglected. And they go to that cemetery, they physically clean it up, and they reclaim that cemetery. There are usually no Jews left in the village, but they do this because it's a way of giving some sense of reminding people that there were Jews who lived here. So he wrote about this one village, which has no Jews in it since 1941, when the Nazis killed the over 2,000 that had lived there. The village elders invited the rabbi and the students to run a Shabbat service in the old synagogue, which since 1960 had become the library for the town. And this is what the rabbi wrote. He said, as no Jewish service has been in this Beit Knesset since the death of the Jewish community in 1942, there would be no other time in the foreseeable future for such a gathering. That's sad. It's sad that there were over 2,000 Jews, a vibrant community, and all that's left is a neglected cemetery that now has been cleaned up, and a group of visitors who, after over 50 years, run a service in what used to be the synagogue. That could happen here, not because of Nazis, but because of indifference, because of neglect, because we forget. Because we forget that others gave us this community. Others willed it. Others decided they wanted it. And they decided it in their lives. If we will it, it will happen. This community, this treasure that we have, that we benefit from, is now in our hands. You know, we learned at Mount Sinai with the golden calf that there's no free lunch. Everybody pays. Everybody. Sometime payment is called due. And I'm saying, I think one way of repaying those who came before is to consider being a part of the new campaign that is being run in this community that's called the Legacy Campaign. You have a bookmark to that in your books. The Legacy Campaign is a decision by the Jewish community to come together. There are 12 initial organizations who are part of it, who are coming together to say we want to have a dialogue with Jews about what they care about. And then we want to ask those Jews to become a part of sustaining this community through wills and bequests, but also through direct gifts, through insurance. The idea is to say people before us gave and made it happen. We need to think about the future too. It's not enough. It's wonderful that we support today, but we have to think about tomorrow. We still want a vibrant Jewish community here. We are an important part of this community. We make a difference in this community. We make a difference through our people and our activities. The only way this community will sustain itself is if we will it. I want you to know every year this community receives gifts from people who've died and left various organizations in the wills. Sometimes they're very small gifts. Sometimes they're millions. But every one of them is what we inherited. We inherited this place, and now it's ours. And so, what can we do for Beth Sholom? And that's what I listed here at the last. And I've been asking you this for a while, but now our president, Marjorie Barron and Rabbi Gail Pomerantz, are going to take on the task of rethinking the way we do mitzvot in this congregation, of the way we think about how we act, about not just feeding the hungry, but trying to get less hungry people in our community. Not just reaching out to inner schools and bringing books to them, but figuring out how to make the education system more balanced and treating everyone equally. And that justice ministry, is going to become a part of this congregation over the next few years. And I'm asking if you're willing to become a volunteer in that development. It's going to take some thinking. It's going to take creativity. It's going to take a lot of work. But we're looking for people who want to join with us in making us more vital, in creating in our community, through our congregation, a more just society. I read of a young man who applied to agricultural school, and the dean was interviewing him and asked him why he had chosen this career as a farmer. And he answered, because I dream of making $1 million in farming just like my father. And the dean said, did your father make $1 million in farming? He said, no, but he dreamed it. I want you to know I have that dream too. It's a dream my father had and didn't fulfill. I dream that. That hope is still alive in my life. And I hope that you dream about not just giving to your children and grandchildren, but giving back to your community and making sure that there's a place here. You know, Beth Sholom believes in what we call Joshua leadership. Moses led by himself, and the people rebelled against him. But Joshua collaborated, and the people fought the wars that needed to be fought, and they fought them together. That collaborative leadership is what goes on here. We work together, the clergy, the staff, all of us, and our lay leadership, and our communities, and our committees, and we work to make things happen. But it can only work if we do it together. Joshua, according to tradition, wrote that prayer called the Aleinu, where we bend our knee and bow over. Aleinu. which means it's upon us. And in that prayer it says, Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. It's upon us to repair the world. That was Joshua's approach, and that's ours as well. We need to address poverty, economic inequality, systematic injustice, sexism, racism. We need to address the laws that exclude gays and lesbians from marrying and adopting in our state, in our community, in our country. We need to work for education equality. We need to work together for these things. We can't change everything, but we must not be indifferent. Justice through our values is what I'm asking. There was this wonderful anonymous piece that I read about a man in Los Angeles who wanted to really feel what it was like to be homeless. So he went down to the Salvation Army store and he got some old clothes and he stood at an exit ramp off the freeway in Los Angeles. And this is what he wrote. There was a cardboard sign in my hands that read, "Can you spare a moment? Blessings appreciated." The hot sun was making the world too bright and my throat was drying up with humiliation. But no one looked at me. No one looked at me. I stood there non-existent, surrounded by the world, yet in complete isolation. I didn't walk up to the folks in the cars, I just stood there. And yet, it was clear that people were very uncomfortable with my presence on the exit ramp. Suddenly, I had a deep reverence for the courage and strength of someone who simply chooses to survive. And not until now did I quite so appreciate the immense power of the smallest act of kindness. I have never been as grateful as I was in those occasional moments when someone would simply make eye contact and offer a smile. You know, that's us in those cars, avoiding. That's us in our seats, being indifferent, forgetting about what should be happening around us. It's time to commit, and I'm asking you to do that. You know, when I look at the children in the foundation school, I always think about the hokey pokey. Same people that remembered the other stuff remember the hokey pokey. So the hokey pokey, why? Because children in the foundation school put their whole selves in everything. Just watch them. They don't stop. They throw themselves into whatever they do. Somewhere we stop doing that. So I'm asking you to throw your whole selves in. And if you can't do that, at least throw your right or left hand in. Take the card, or go online, or email, and make the commitments. There are 4 of them. Try to make all 4, but make commitments this year. And don't be indifferent. Don't sit there again this year and say, "Nice talk, Rabbi. Thanks. Made me feel good or ashamed or a little guilty, but I'm going on to the break, when at lunch somewhere, and it'll be fine." There are things that need to be done this year, and we need you to do them. So fill out that card and look at the world not through Google Glass, but through Jewish glasses. And look at the world and ask yourself, am I doing enough for the gratitude I feel for the world that I inherited? Someday the Messiah, God willing, will come. I don't know when, probably won't be in my lifetime. But you never know. When Franz Kafka, this is the 100th anniversary of his birth, wrote a little piece called The Coming of the Messiah, he said, the Messiah will come only when he is no longer necessary. He will come only on the day after his arrival. He will come not on the last day, but on the very last day. With our help, we can make that happen. We could actually bring the Messiah because he won't be needed anymore. And then we'll build the oneness that is in the vision that Judy Chicago wrote about when she said, "And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then all will cherish life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth and then everywhere will be called Eden once again. Halavai. And halavai that you and I are a part of making that happen. Shana Tova U'Mituka, may this 5774 be a year for you of passion and commitment, a year of sweetness for all of us. Shana Tova.